Pokemon games are too easy. That's why fans created Nuzlockes and difficulty ROM hacks. They wanted Pokemon to be more of a challenge. But what if you want the opposite? What if you wanted to do a Pokemon playthrough that was stupidly easy? Here are 9 ways you can have a broken and boring Pokemon playthrough, ordered from least to most ridiculous. Few quick restrictions to clarify first though. First, I'm excluding limited time events. Second, you have to be able to do these things alone and with just one console, and without sending any Pokemon to other save files. Obviously, you could trade one of your Pokemon to another save file and console that had finished the game, level it up very quickly, and then trade it back, but that would be pretty uninteresting. Similarly, joining another person's high star raid to reap all the late game rewards you're not supposed to have access to yet is also excluded for this video. And the final restriction, no external hacking equipment. But if the game itself has a glitch or two built in, then I think that's fine. First, let's talk about speedrunning. We can learn from their techniques, because if you want to beat a Pokemon game fast, the best way is to get an extremely overpowered Pokemon as early as possible. For red, blue, and yellow speedruns, glitchless ones, I should specify, there is one particular Pokemon that carries the playthroughs, and it could carry yours too. On Route 22, just west of Viridian City, you can find Nidoran Male. It evolves into Nidorino at the pleasantly low level of just 16, and around the same time, you can find a Moonstone within Mount Moon. Using that gives you Nidoking immediately. A Pokemon with a base stat total of 495 in the modern mechanics before you even have 2 gym badges. Now, a significant downside to doing this is that it will learn almost no level up moves, but if you're just trying to blast through the game, use all your TMs on it. And part of the reason Nidoking is so good is that it can learn a lot of TMs. Now you might be wondering why I'm only discussing Nidoking and not Nidoqueen, since you could theoretically do this same thing starting with Nidoran Female. There are 2 reasons the Gen 1 speedrunners opt for Nidoking over Nidoqueen. First, while Nidoqueen gets Body Slam at level 23, Nidoking instead gets Thrash, which is stronger and gives you multiple turns of damage for just 1 PP usage, meaning less frequent healing. The second reason is that because of the heavy usage of Thrash, then later Earthquake in the endgame, Nidoking's higher attack and speed stats matter a lot, especially since crits are tied to speed in Gen 1. Nidoking will help you stomp through any of the Kanto games, but it's extra broken in Gen 1. Once you reach Celadon City, the department store sells TM07 for just $2,000. TM07 has been many different moves, but only in Gen 1 did it contain Horn Drill, the guaranteed one-hit KO move, if it hits. And it doesn't have a very good chance to. The modern games use a formula to determine its accuracy based on the user's and the target's levels that ignores changes to accuracy or evasion stats. However, in Gens 1 and 2, it's a flat accuracy of 30%. But even more importantly, the X accuracy item also works very differently. Instead of a 1-stage boost to the in-battle accuracy stat, 1x accuracy made it so all your moves bypass accuracy checks completely, like Aerial Ace does. That included the Oko moves, meaning by using just 1 item, your Horn Drills are guaranteed to hit for the rest of the battle, assuming your speed stat is higher than the enemy Pokemon. But if you're only using 1 Nidoking, you're gonna end up over-leveled. In short, before you have 4 badges, you have a way to guarantee sweep any trainer in the game that isn't using ghost types. They are immune to Horn Drill. However, that's really only a problem with Agatha. And at that point, just use Earthquake. There's no Levitate in Gen 1. Nidoking is not the only early OP Pokemon, though. How would you like something more than 100 base stat total points stronger? Pseudo-legendary Pokemon are an incredibly powerful group. The final forms have base stat totals of 600, almost as high as Box Art Legends, and stronger than most of the legendary trios. In exchange for this power though, their evolution levels are high and their experience growth is slow, if you can even obtain the unevolved forms at reasonable points in the game. And then came the Alola games, and they ignored these limitations. Sun and Moon introduced the SOS feature, where during a battle with a wild Pokemon, it may call for help, summoning an ally to their side. The more you call in, the better IVs the new Pokemon will have, and the more likely it becomes they will have their hidden ability or be shiny. The called in Pokemon are usually the same species as the original, but many examples exist of different ones. Cubone can call in Kangaskhan. Tauros can summon Miltank. Castform can pop up in lots of places if there's some kind of weather condition. But most of these different species ally Pokemon are the evolved forms of the original. And one of those situations is Bagon summoning Salamence. On Route 3, before fighting Hala, you can find wild Bagon that have a 1% chance to call in a level 9 to 12 Salamence. Outrageous! Pun intended. This means you can totally bypass the weaker Bagon and Shelgon and use what is essentially a legendary Pokemon immediately. And yes, it is 4 times weak to ice, which happens to be the only type in the Alola region to not have a major specialist. Now, it will take some time to actually find the Salamence, but once you catch it, the early game becomes far easier than it was ever designed to be, along with the middle game. And probably the end game too. I don't know, I've never done this. This next method gives you an equally strong Pokemon, but right off the bat. It's gonna cost you though. Alongside the launch of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, an accessory called the Pokeball Plus was released. This $50 controller could be used to play the games, but you could also deposit Pokemon into it, interact with them within the ball, and connect it to Pokemon Go. Doing these things could gain you items in Let's Go, like candies and berries. It was pretty lame. Not a very good controller, and also I did the deposit thing like once and it was pretty boring. But most significantly, a Pokeball Plus could dispense a Mew to your save file immediately upon starting the game with no restrictions. Mew also has a base stat total of 600, but you get it sooner than Salamence, and it can learn any TM in the game, letting you customize it for any of the major battles. Plus, it's a psychic type, infamously strong in Kanto, even as late as Gen 7, due to the lack of Dark and Ghost types. However, one Pokeball Plus dispensed one single Mew. Not one per save file, one total. This Mew is extremely powerful, but it is a $50 Pokemon. Even if you buy a used Pokeball Plus on eBay or something, it almost certainly does not have the Mew on it anymore. I've ranted about this in other videos before, and so I'm not gonna do it again at risk of raising my blood pressure. So in short, it's one of the most anti-consumer things Pokemon has ever done. But the Mew was strong, so that's why I'm talking about it. Hi, real quick, I just wanted to add a clarification here. I know I used the past tense in this moment, but the Mew doesn't technically count as a limited time event, because if somehow you do get your hands on a Pokeball Plus that has not dispensed the Mew, then you can still do it today. Even though it's probably pretty unlikely that you could find that. Good luck. Fun fact, this Mew can also be redeemed in Sword and Shield, but very few people probably did that. If you bought the accessory alongside Let's Go, which is what it was launched alongside, why would you wait a year to put it in Sword and Shield when you have Let's Go right away? Like, I would guess maybe under 1,000 people total got the Mew from the Pokeball Plus into Sword and Shield. Might be just like 100, I don't know. Haha, it is I, Grunty Boy, and oh my God, is that a new chair? It is. It's the C7 Max from FlexiSpot, the sponsor of today's video. Can I sit in it? Why would I let you, wait. What? No, hey! How dare you take my chair? You know what? Fine. Oh, goody. Ooh, wow, it's so comfortable. I'm a big believer in the importance of good ergonomics, especially if you spend a lot of time at your desk working or gaming like I do. And the C7 Max is perfect for that. You can change the back height and seat depth, and the headrest is 3D adjustable. The armrests are the most customizable I've ever seen on a chair, and the lumbar support is excellent. Unlike most chairs, it supports the sacrum, meaning it automatically supports the lumbar too. Oh, and don't forget the seat cushion, 0.2-inch latex with memory foam. Ooh, such exquisite reclination! And what's this down here? There's a footrest too? Exquisite! I should buy a boat. How about you just buy the chair? There's a 10-year warranty and a 30-day return policy. Go to the link in the description below and use my code C750 to get $50 off. And be sure to check out FlexiSpot's other excellent chair options at whatever price point you're comfortable with, like the C5 or the new C7 Morpher. I will do that promptly, if I can ever bring myself to stand up from this comfort. Get out. Okay, sorry. Ta-ta. Now what could possibly be more broken than an early Mew? An early Mew and something else. In Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, there's a friendly old couple in Floaroma Town, accessible after getting just one badge. This is technically later than the Pokeball Plus Mew, but follow me here. If you speak to the woman while your Switch has save data from Let's Go Pikachu or Eevee, she will simply hand you a Mew. It's level 1, so you'll have to catch it up to the rest of your team, but still, this is a very early, very strong Pokemon, as I just explained. But what about the man? If you have save data for Sword or Shield, he hands you a Jirachi! 2 Mythicals! With 1 badge! One can learn any TM, and the other is a Steel type with 9 resistances plus an immunity. So sure, it's not quite as early as some of the other ones I've discussed, but like, it's 2 Mythicals! Immediately, what are we doing? Crazy! By the way, if you're wondering why I've yet to discuss the Coliseum bonus disc Jirachi that you can send to Ruby and Sapphire immediately in English USA copies of the games, well, I was actually gonna make it an entry on this list in this video, and then I realized it actually kind of sucks. The modern Mews and Jirachis have the player's OT, original trainer, meaning they will never disobey you. But the bonus disc Jirachi's OT is Wishmaker. Technically Wishmaker if we're getting silly. So you're fine right away until it hits level 11. But then you'll have problems until you beat Brawly. Then you're fine for a bit, but then you're capped to level 30 until you beat Flannery. Then to 50 until Winona. So if you're trying to like solo run blasts through the game with this Jirachi like you could with the Salamence or the Mews, you actually probably can't. It's gonna end up disobeying you way too frequently. Now, how could we possibly get any more ridiculous than 2 early legendary Pokemon? How about 3? Pokemon Dream Radar was a game available in the 3DS eShop, where players could use the system's camera and augmented reality technology to shoot lasers at clouds and Pokemon flying around your room. Okay, maybe it was fun. I don't know. I've never played it. This game would likely be forgotten by now, except for the fact that it introduced the Therian forms of Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus, and served as the only way to obtain them in Black 2 and White 2. Once you progress far enough in Dream Radar and obtain these legends, you can transfer them to your copy of Black 2 and White 2 with no progression restrictions. Instead, their levels scale depending on your number of badges, and if you have none, they'll be level 5. They'll have your OT though, so you can start the game with 2 580 base stat total Pokemon and 1 600. And sure, they're all flying types, but because there's 3, they cover each other's weaknesses. Rock and Electric are stopped by Landorus, whose water weakness is handled by Thundurus. They are all weak to ice, but this is Black 2 and White 2. Bryson's a movie star now. Progressing far enough in Dream Radar to get them will take some time, and if you don't already have the game, you'll have to do some fancy technology to get it today. because the 3DS eShop is no more. This doesn't really count as a limited time event though, since if you have everything accessible, you can still run through an entire game with 3 legendary Pokemon. Quick side note before I move to the next entry though, Dream Radar can also get you the box art legends for the Gen 4 games if you insert their cartridges into the 3DS. However, I simply could not find a clear answer online on whether you need the national decks to transfer these legends into Black 2 and White 2. So because of this uncertainty, I was hesitant to count them here. If you do not end up needing it though, then this entry might belong higher, because you'd start the game with a full team of legends, assuming you own all 5 Gen 4 games. The previous situations all involved obtaining high base stat Pokemon long before you normally could. These next couple situations are ways to make any of your Pokemon ridiculously OP. Chansey gives more experience when defeated than almost any other Pokemon. The only ones to offer more are Mega Audino, Eternamax Eternatus, and of course, Blissey. But since 2 of those are never wild and 1 very rarely is, Chansey ends up the de facto way to get a lot of experience quickly. And this goofy pink egg holding an egg can really let you break things if you can find it early. One of those situations is in Let's Go, a game where catching Pokemon provides far more experience than trainer battles do. Chansey is found all over the map, but the earliest location is Mount Moon. Chansey is what's called a special or a rare spawn, where it is exceedingly hard to find if you don't have a catch combo, but as soon as you get a catch combo of about 11, you'll have 1 on your screen at all times. The process is simple. First, go into Mount Moon with Great Balls, Pokeballs, and Lures. Then reset a room over and over again until you find your first Chansey. Then once you do, shake the second Joy-Con to bring in a friend. This is the intended co-op mode, or like a parent helping their kiddo, but you can use it by yourself for huge advantages. Not only does co-op catching increase the chance of success, but if the throws are synced, it gives you a big experience bonus, called the synchronized bonus. You can synchronize your throws really easily by using the Joy-Con grip. Just snap both Joy-Cons into the grip and then throw 2 controllers as one. Repeat this process over and over again, aiming for excellent throws, and rake in the experience. When I did this, the first 40 minutes were a slog, rarely finding Chansey. But once I hit that catch combo of 11, I had one available at nearly all times. Sometimes I'd get under 1,000 experience points, but every once in a while, I'd get a massive bomb of over 14,000. I started this process with a team of Pokemon ranging from levels 5 to 11. After just over an hour total of catch comboing Chansey, which were only level 11 themselves, my entire team had passed level 50. The champion's strongest Pokemon is level 57. If you commit to this at the start of a Let's Go playthrough, you will steamroll the rest of the game. And if you get kind of tired of it, just keep going for a little bit more. You'll find higher level Chansey just a bit later. Again, they are everywhere. Also, can you imagine doing this with the frickin' Pokeball plus Mew? Oh my God! Scarlet and Violet have their own pink egg exploit too, but I think it's even more powerful. By the way, I learned about this strategy from a video by Philly Beats You and just modified it a bit. There are really only 2 prerequisites. The first is getting your ride Pokemon, since the map is not open until you do that. The second is a solidly strong fighting type, or some other creative way to defeat Chansey that are much higher level than you. I caught a Makuhita just east of Mesa Goza. It evolves to Hariyama at the pleasantly low level of 24, and it gets bulk up very early. I do think Flamigo could also work for this, especially if you started using one right away. With your team sorted, head out west from Mesa Goza and follow the road to the desert. Then cross the desert, and then follow the other road to the Fairy Team Star Camp. This path is possible without any upgrades for Koraidon or Miraidon, and takes just a couple minutes. Once there, make a simple ham sandwich. The ingredients for it are cheap and found easily in West Mesa Goza stores. This creates the level 1 normal encounter power, which is enough for Chansey to be everywhere. But forget the stupid Chansey, Blissey are everywhere. As we discussed earlier, they offer the most experience of any Pokemon. I had to be a bit strategic with the earliest battles. You should be doing regular battles, not auto battles. Those give you way less experience. But once I leveled up just a bit, things started going really smoothly. Before long, Hariyama could take down Blissey by itself without issue. My team started looking like this, but after just one 30-minute sandwich, they looked like this. And I was super inefficient at the beginning. I was fighting some Chanseys. I should have just been fighting Blissey the whole time. You could easily do a second or third sandwich to make your team even more OP. All of this is possible without a single badge and by getting just one Pokemon to level 24. You might even be able to accomplish it sooner at a lower level if you come up with some creative strategy that I didn't. In short, by exploiting the open world and battling Blissey early, you can massively overlevel your team before a single boss fight. We're reaching the final few here, where things get absolutely ridiculous. In most Pokemon games, you are barred from getting high-level Pokemon early in the game. Unless you train up your own, of course. The high-level wild Pokemon are found in later areas that you cannot reach, and traded-in Pokemon will disobey you without enough badges. But as the maps grew more open, Game Freak needed new strategies to keep you from breaking the game. In Scarlet and Violet plus the Legends games, you can catch high-level Pokemon whenever you want. However, the game checks the level they were obtained at, and compares that to your progression milestones. If you're not far enough, even Pokemon you caught yourself will disobey you, much like Ash's Charizard. When that arc of the anime happened, your own caught Pokemon always obeyed you no matter what. So some interesting foresight that part of the anime had. And I wonder if they used that as inspiration for this modern method. But just before this obtainment level system, Sword and Shield had a different one. All your own Pokemon will always obey you, like every game before, but whether or not you can catch them depends on how many badges you have. If the enemy Pokemon is too strong, it simply bars you from throwing the ball. This does not apply to max raids though. In a regular raid, if you somehow end up in one that exceeds your level limit, then somehow catch it, which is not guaranteed, the raid boss's level will be scaled down to your limit when it goes to your PC. But then the DLC came out, specifically the second part, the Crown Tundra, and Dynamax Adventures broke everything. Very early in the game, once you've gone through the opening ceremonies in Motostoke, you can travel to the DLC locations. In the Crown Tundra, you have to fight Peony, who will destroy you. He has level 70s. But losing doesn't change anything. You can progress just fine regardless of the battle's outcome. Then with just a quick little jog, you'll reach the Max Lair, home of Dynamax Adventures. In this game mode, you use rental Pokemon to progress through a series of raids, catching Pokemon and swapping them out along the way. It culminates in a boss fight versus a legendary Pokemon, which you're guaranteed to catch if you defeat it, like all the Pokemon before. Once your run is over, you can select one of the Pokemon you caught to keep permanently. That Pokemon you get to keep is level 65 minimum. Even though you throw a ball at them, like in regular Pokemon battles or max raids, the obtainment actually occurs at the end, behaving like a gift Pokemon. And there's no catch limit nor scaling down for gift Pokemon. With one run through, you can get a level 65 Pokemon that will obey you. But you probably aren't even gonna go for one of those. The first boss is always level 70 Suicune. So as long as you win the run, you have a guaranteed way to start the game with a massively over-leveled legend. And this isn't the Legends games or Scarlet and Violet. It doesn't care about the obtainment level. It has your OT, so it will obey you no matter what. If you really wanted to, you could repeat this process 5 more times and get a full team of wildly overleveled Pokemon, some of which will probably end up being legendaries. This utterly trivializes the entire game. Like discussed before, if there's a way to break the game, speedrunners will use it. And the current world record for Sword and Shield speedruns with the DLC does indeed use Dynamax Adventures. Although, they actually just grabbed 1 Heliolisk and dipped. Very impressive. Didn't even need Suicune. There's just 1 entry left. But before I reveal it to you, hey, if you watch this far into the video, you probably like what I do. So, if you wanna subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Now, for the final entry. In my opinion, the most ridiculous way to break a Pokemon game. I should say up front, this method does utilize glitches. Which I don't really consider to be hacking. Like, you're just using the tools available to you. You're not bringing in an extra device or anything. This won't count for a glitchless speedrun. But I'm not speedrunning, we're just trying to make it easy. This glitch works a bit differently in red and blue versus yellow. I tried it out in red. First, you have to start with Charmander. You need a Pokemon that knows Growl and can be poisoned. Squirtle does not know Growl, and Bulbasaur cannot be poisoned. There might be some others that would work that you can catch in the early routes, but this is just easy. Additionally, do not fight your rival west of Viridian, nor progress past the final trainer in Viridian Forest. Next, get Charmander poisoned, likely from a wild Weedle, then trigger a poison frame and a wild encounter at the same time in front of this last trainer in Viridian Forest. 3 things happening all at once in 1 box. I actually got pretty lucky here since the position in which I got poisoned just so happened to be the right amount of steps away to trigger a frame right on this square every time. I just had to reset until I got a wild encounter. You then have to lose to that wild Pokemon, easy thanks to the poison, and then you'll black out right as the trainer tries to fight you. But you escape and end up back at the Pokemon Center. You now have a question to answer. What Pokemon do you want? You cannot have anything. First, it has to be a Pokemon in the medium-slow experience group. I'll explain why later. Then from this list, find a Pokemon whose species corresponds to a low enough special stat, the DEC column, that can be encountered this early in the game. Don't ask me how this works. I can't explain it. Way over my head, I've done very little coding. For example, you cannot get Charizard through this method, at least not this early in the game, because you'd have to find a Pokemon to fight that had a special stat of 180. Eliminating any Pokemon that require an enemy special stat that is too high, there actually only ends up being 3 Pokemon practical for this early game method. So go ahead, choose your starter. Once you've selected one, find an enemy Pokemon with the right special stat and growl it 6 times. Due to quirks of the code that are, again, far over my head, the upcoming glitched encounters level is based on the attack stage or value or level, whatever it is, of the previous fight. So if you growl it only 5 times, the upcoming wild Pokemon will be higher than level 1. And we need to catch something that's at level 1. Your branching paths are as follows. Growling your rival's level 8 Squirtle just so happens to have the right special stat to spawn Gengar, one of the most common Pokemon people get with this glitch. The other common choice is our old pal Nidoking, for which you have to growl down a level 3 Pidgey. Growling a level 4 Pidgey will give you the 3rd practical option, Ivysaur. Which, funnily enough, I actually did by mistake when aiming for Nidoking. I didn't know the Pidgey had to be level 3. And that was actually super lucky, because that's the last one that works. Once you've done your growling, head to the forest without starting any other battles, and right as you enter, text appears for that trainer we avoided earlier, but a wild battle begins against your determined Pokemon. Catch it by only throwing Pokeballs, because in my experience, any kind of attack just killed it. Now you can actually make more Pokemon than just Nidoking, Gengar, and Ivysaur show up. A special stat of 7 is what brings Nidoking, 9 brings Ivysaur, and 14 brings Gengar. So you could find some enemy Pokemon to growl down that have comparably low special stat numbers. For example, a special stat of 8 brings Slowbro, 10 brings Exeggutor, and 11 brings Lickitung. So you could grab those instead. However, only the select few in medium slow can truly break the game. The final step is to switch train your new Pokemon in one wild battle. With just a little bit of experience, it will go straight from level 1 to level 100, even evolving if applicable like my Ivysaur did. This happens partially because the Pokemon is level 1, which isn't supposed to be possible in this game, and partially because for Pokemon in the medium slow experience group, and only that group, the game thinks that at level 1, they have negative 54 experience points. However, thanks to unsigned integers, whatever that means, I looked it up, I couldn't understand it. I'm sorry, I'm not a coder. This negative 54 behaves like 16,777,162. Therefore, gaining under 54 experience points, I think if you go over that, you just go to level 2, causes the game to try to figure out the new level based on the previous total experience value, which is 16 million, thus blasting the Pokemon to level 100. Congratulations! Regardless of your second starter choice, you can now beat the game in your sleep because you have a level 100 Pokemon before getting a single badge, and it only took you a matter of minutes. By the way, if you decide to do this, I personally recommend Nidoking. Gengar and Ivysaur's movesets aren't that great, but Nidoking starts with Thrash. You remember Thrash? We've come full circle. This glitch in yellow has the same end result, but the method to start it is different, involving an escape rope and the NPC that blocks you from leaving Pewter. I didn't try it. It looked harder. But, you know, you could still do it. That concludes 9 ways to break and make boring a Pokemon game. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see another video that'll show you how to start a playthrough strong without breaking it to the point of triviality, check out my video where I go over the first Pokemon you should catch in every Pokemon game.